Hello and welcome everybody to Team Smiley's presentation of the alternation of generations of ferns. Ferns and lycophytes, also known as fern allies, are seedless vascular plants in between bryophytes and gymnosperms on the phylogenetic tree. They are related to both in not having flowers, but differ from the bryophytes in that they have stems and microphylls or megaphylls, and in that the sporophyte is dominant and diploid. They differ from the gymnosperms in that they only have one type of spore, as opposed to microspores or megaspores, require water still for flagellated sperm instead of pollen, are seedless, and have adventitious roots, which grow out of specialized rhizome stems and are not a true root. When it comes to the widely assorted versions of the alternation of generations, the fern is one of the simplest of all to understand. The large, leafy fern we all recognize and love to hang from baskets is the diploid sporophyte organism. On the undersurface of its fronds, or the leaves, its cells undergo meiosis to create haploid cells. However, these cells do not immediately unite with others to recreate the diploid state. Instead, they are shed as spores, and when the condition is right, germinate into small haploid organisms. Because the diploid organism creates spores, it is called the sporophyte generation of the life cycle. Upon reaching maturity, the haploid organism creates haploid egg and sperm cells, gametes, by mitosis. Because the haploid organism creates gametes, it is called gametophyte generation of the life cycle. The male gametes, the sperm, are then released and swim to the female egg. Fusion of the gametes creates a new diploid sporophyte, completing the life cycle.
A sporophyte is the diploid multicellular stage of ferns developed from a zygote. Each sporophyte contains 2 chromosome sets, one from each parent. A young sporophyte relies on the gametophyte for nutrition. The young sporophyte will go through meiosis and reduce the number of chromosomes and result in a haploid cell. This is known as the mature sporophyte. Haploid cells only contain one set of chromosomes. This then forms a sporangium, which is an enclosure in which spores are formed. They are formed through meiosis and produce genetically distinct haploid spores. The megagametophytes of ferns develop within the sporangia of the parent sporophyte. The resulting zygote then develops into a megaspore, which is contained within the sporangium of the parent sporophyte.
With a few exceptions, fern spores ripen in cover structures on the underside of some or all of the fronds of a fern. A spore will stay viable as long as it's stored right for years. Spores can sprout at any time of the year as long as they have a warm, sunny place where it's humid and free of pathogens and competitors like mosses and liverworts. A spore is simply a single cell that begins dividing and growing as soon as it is able to absorb moisture in the right conditions. It doesn't take long before you'll notice a film of green appearing on the surface of a potting mix. What you are seeing is a host of tiny gametophytes, small moss-like creatures that are a means of which ferns accomplish sexual recombination. Once a gametophyte is large enough and the conditions are right, it releases mobile sperm that swim through the film of the water in search of pockets of eggs to fertilize.
Antheridia covers the surface of the prothallus. Antheridium is the structure that produces and stores sperm cells in bryophytes and ferns alike. The sperm is also referred to as antherozoids. The infrastructure of Antheridium is very similar to the human testicles. The archegonia or archegonium is the female structure containing the egg cells of an organism. When the sperm from the Antheridium fertilizes the archegonium egg cell, a single zygote is produced. The fertilized zygote contains 2 chromosomes, one from the Antheridium and one from the archegonium. After the egg is established as being fertilized, and after multiple divisions, the zygote becomes an embryo. The following stage after the embryo would be the development of a sporling or fiddlehead. After the stage of the sporulin or fiddlehead, the organism would grow into a new sporophyte.
And that concludes Team Smiley's presentation on the fern's alternation of generations process. We hope you benefited from this video in some way. You can learn about ferns and the things we discussed in further detail by checking out our sources in the Works Cited section. Never stop learning, and don't forget to smile.